Welcome to Wheel of Ezekiel Astrology. Returning today is Michel Suter, who is the author of this book, Venus in Virgo, Archetypes of Goddess Consciousness in Astrology. Michel has recently launched a new class that we're going to be discussing today. So, Michel, welcome.
Thanks. It's great to see you. Great to be back.
Yeah, it's been a while, but it sounds like you've been working really hard, putting out a lot of really insightful content lately.
Yeah. So I've had several epiphanies in terms of astrology, and I've been researching certain things that most people don't, roads that have had not really been gone down in the past in normal astrology teaching, or even the way people think about astrology. I have been investigating the Zodiac as a religious symbol. And I've been specifically looking for the footprints and the fingerprints of the chthonic gods in astrology that are not, they're not represented in the heavens, or at least it weren't until the outer planets were discovered. Then we have Pluto or Hades showed up, and Neptune's another that would be a chthonic god.
Hmm.
For people who aren't familiar with the term chthonic, this is the dark gods of generally represent fertility. They're linked to agriculture. They're linked to like nymphs and satyrs, and also to death, underworlds, to the great goddess, especially. So the great goddess herself, in the most basic theology of humanity, you have a great heavenly god who is male, and you have a an earth mother who is female. And this, of course, is Uranus and Gaia in the original mythology of Greece. And as we know, Uranus has showed up as an outer planet, but it's not exactly following Uranus's, the actual mythology of Uranus is a bit more nuanced and not made for, we don't understand a lot of the concepts in modern times that go into some of these gods. So I've been really trying to plumb the depths, basically, of these chthonic gods and find them in astrology and what they really mean.
Hmm.
And one of the most important ones in the ancient world was Dionysus. And of course, there's no named celestial body, Dionysus, of course. But given that he's the single most important god of ancient times, it sort of became an obsession of mine to figure out where and how Dionysus is represented in astrology. And I found a lot of very interesting things because I'll get into that later, but
Right, right.
it's a
Just to mention that your class is actually called uh, Mysteries of the Zodiac, Finding Dionysus. So that's essentially, would you say that that's the essential premise about what the class is about, essentially?
yes. So when we're talking about Dionysus, we need to understand that Dionysus was a particular cult leader in ancient times. He was the agent of the proxy of the great goddess, and he was the protector of the goddess mystery tradition, which is the mystery cults as we know them now. And there's not very much really known about them because they were secretive. They were goddess oriented, so they actually represented a completely different type of religion than the religion of the outer world of the state of the kingdom that's practiced in front of people, in large coliseums. There'd be like oblations, there'd be, sacrifices for the gods, for Zeus, usually for the heavenly gods in that arena.
Right,
The the mystery cult tradition was a completely different tradition, and the two basically existed side by side within ancient cultures.
right.
So,
That brings me to my
yeah.
actually my first question. For all this, right, you're touching on is it's really fascinating, and I think it'll dovetail really good with. the most fascinating thing I've recently heard you say, or is a discovery rather that you've made, something you've brought to my attention, is you mentioned recently in one of your presentations the concept of the doctrine of sect, which anyone that's familiar with basic Hellenistic astrology knows that there's a diurnal sect and a nocturnal sect. But you are
Yep.
the first person I've heard make the correlation that these are in fact religious sects. So there's actually
Yes.
this whole religious thing with which goes in line with what you were just saying about the lunar, uh, which just rules the night sect, and then the solar, the day sect, being the inner and outer two different cults essentially
Right.
that exist. Maybe you want to keep touching on that and elaborate more.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so this is actually opens up a huge can of worms. What this does to astrology is it basically revolutionizes astrology in a lot of ways because when you
Hmm.
have two separate cults and you got these planets are literally representative of different cults that have different agendas and they work through different methodologies.
Mm.
And literally are working towards different ends. And what I've done is I've basically taken the another concept, which is the concept of the great god and the great goddess, which is
Hmm.
something that's also not all that well known. This is a very common thing in ancient times to understand that you could access all of the goddesses. And when you're talking about goddesses, you're talking about like, one who's specifically oriented towards, love, ones that's more towards, um,
Fertility or
yeah,
anything
fertility. Yeah.
anything feminine, right?
And
Like
yeah,
you.
and there's some that are herbology, these things. There are specific areas of or even warfare. There's female gods of warfare.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Athena, right?
Athena, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's many more.
Or
And some of
yeah.
them, it's a bit more complicated. And my class actually gets into some of that too.
Hmm.
Um, so these are potential, and each what happens when you divide the planets into sects is you create a trinity, essentially, a Trinitarian sect in which you have a luminary who's basically embodies the sect. It is the sect, essentially. It is the most pure expression of that sect
Right. So
by
like
its
I just
nature.
want to mention for people that aren't familiar with this, just to not take for granted that people understand this concept of
Yeah,
Hellenistic astrology.
yeah, yeah.
So the sun is the leader of the day sect, obviously, because the sun is out in the
Yep.
day. So he's like the high priest, you could say. And on the day sect, we also have Jupiter, and
Hmm.
which is the great benefic, right? And then we have Saturn, who is the great malefic. So that's
Yep.
the diurnal or day sect. And then for the night, we would have the moon, who's the great priestess, the great goddess, right? And then
Yep.
Venus, the lesser benefic, and then Mars, who is the lesser malefic. And then we have Mercury, of course, is the seventh, who isn't on either one. Because of his nature, Mercury is at the helm, right? Essentially, that he can, as the psychopomp, go between both worlds, the day and the night, the above and the below. Mercury is very mutable by nature, so therefore he doesn't belong to either
Exactly.
exclusively. But anyway,
Right.
continue. I just wanted to get that out there just so people could get an idea of what
Yeah,
we're talking about
precisely.
more so. But
Precisely.
continue.
Yeah, so this really expands out to encompass the entirety of astrological theory, what I'm getting into here.
Hmm.
So as we know, let's get a little bit into the house joys now, because let's talk about that, because what that gives you a picture of that these are two different realms essentially. So when you
Hmm.
look at the zodiac and you put Aries into the first house, and we're going to be dealing with what's called the natural zodiac right now, because
Hmm.
we're talking about a thema mundi here. We're talking about a place where life begins, and what I haven't gotten into yet is this is the Persephone myth, is what we're talking about. So
Hmm.
this is where, and I got it into that at the end of my book, was that after all the research I did into what I'm talking about right now, I basically figured out that the Zodiac was telling the story of Persephone.
Hmm.
And what I've done now is completely confirmed that this is all about the story of Persephone. This is 100% Homeric myth is what we're getting into. So the The house system for astrology divides us into the first six houses, which of course are these are all they cover the topics which are all up close and personal, and they have to do with things that we feel that are about our body, that are about our stuff
Right, our
and
inner
our
world.
ancestry and our blood,
Hmm.
essentially. Things that flow well from our body and that have a great deal of connection to the goddess, because the goddess is all about the night and the dark when things are up close and personal. And it's not about transcendent ideas. It's all about things that are near to us and things that also come from us and are in us. So it's all about the body. It's about our ancestry, and it's about our close surroundings. And this is the realm of the goddess. And in the house joys, we see that is completely played out, because we have, well, first of all, we have the first house in which we have the joy of Mercury, and the sunrise essentially is between the two realms. So the first house is where the two meet. And this, of course, is Mercury's domain, because he is the one who can go up, he can go down, he can speak with the gods up in the heavens, and he can also, we have terrestrial Mercury or Hermes who can go into the depths of the earth. And that's well established in the mythology. And it's perfectly established in the Zodiac as well, given that his joy is in the first house. And we're going to start to figure out what joy actually means, because one of the issues with astrology is we have terms like rulership, joy, exaltation, and we all we get is sort of very vague ideas of what these things mean. And what I'm suggesting through this process is I've actually gotten a lot more depth of understanding of what these things actually mean. So the lower part of the zodiac is of the night, essentially, and Mercury is in his joy in the first house, and then we move to the third house. We have the moon in her joy, and that's generally thought of as a place where our local surroundings are, like our day-to-day routine kind of. Our siblings and blood relatives are there. Now, when you look at the way the zodiac is constructed, the ninth house across from that is the house of philosophy, where the sun is in his joy, and the third is the house of the where the goddess is in her joy. So what's actually being said by this is when the third house is where the goddess actually spreads her gospel of her sect. This is where she informs everybody of what they're supposed to do, essentially. This
Where
is
they're
the
where
at
they're
the
educated, because it's kind of the third
where
house.
they're educated. Yeah.
This is the house of education and early instruction, right? So
Yep.
essentially, right,
Yep.
communication too.
And
So it's yeah, go on.
communication. Yep.
Hmm.
But it's not in any way transcendent stuff. This is not big ideas. These are small ideas, and they're very local stuff. Like,
Hmm.
so in the third house, when you look at it in this religious sort of paradigm where we're thinking about the whole thing, we're talking about a sect. So we're talking about, your marching orders as a member of a cult. So that's what the moon in the third is doing, is she's telling the members of her cult what to do, and she's commanding the lower part of the zodiac from that third house, because it's a communication place, just like the ninth house is a communication place to the day sect. This is where, but again, it's not transcendent. These are not big ideas,
Right.
and they affect your community, but not further than that, and your blood. The people who are close to you, your siblings, your cousins, like people who are of your tribe, essentially, are going to be affected by this. But again, it's not big ideas. This is like parochial stuff. So actually, religion is in a lot of ways here, because like if you're going to a church, you're generally not going to a huge coliseum, and you're not, the sun. You're not like,
No,
it's not.
it's your local congregation because it has to do with
Yeah,
neighborhoods and
yeah,
just things that are familiar.
precisely,
Right, right. So I got that.
precisely.
So that's good.
Yep, yep, yep,
Then moving to the
yep.
fifth
So
house. The fifth house is the
moving to
joy of Venus, right?
exactly. Yep, yep. So This is a trine from the ascendant, as we know. So this is when you talk
Hmm.
about things flowing. This is things that flow easily from the body and are very much in line with the body. And that, of course, is sexuality. Is something that's very much it flows from the body.
Hmm.
It doesn't take any sort of it's just something that happens. It's part of what we who and what we are.
Yeah, effortless.
When you look, what's that?
Effort. It's effortless. It's just
It's
enjoyment.
effortless. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's
pure enjoyment. It's pure
leisure.
enjoyment.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Creativity.
yeah.
Mhm.
And when you think about ancient goddess religions were actually very much oriented towards temple prostitution, another idea that's uncomfortable for modern people, and we don't think about it because we don't, it's not part of our lexicon. However,
Hmm.
traditional people, this was very much part of the goddess cult. The temple prostitute was one of the highest callings for a woman to occupy. Now, this is Venus here in the fifth house. That's her joy. So one thing that you can that's of note when you think about this. So this is in the natural zodiac. This is Leo. So this is sort of we're sort of combining this Leo energy with Venus. Now, when we think about cross-quarter holidays, the cross-quarter holiday is Lugnasad, which falls in the center of Leo season. Basically, it's 45 degrees from the solstice, the summer solstice.
Right. Right.
Venus never goes 40 more than 45 degrees from any particular point. So 45 degrees is a Venusian angle to first in the first place.
Okay.
All of our cross-quarter holidays fall 45 degrees from a solstice or a
Or equinox.
equinox,
Hmm.
which are liminal points, essentially. The idea of a limen or a liminal point is extremely important in this cosmology. So what I'm getting towards like a actual cosmology, the zodiac being used as a cosmological tool to tell us about religion and also about sort of an ecosystem of how reality works. This gets way bigger into what the zodiac really is. So the 45 degrees from the summer solstice is Lugnasad. And what is that? That is the marriage of the sun god to the earth mother in traditional Celtic celebrations. So it's literally, it's the first fruits celebration halfway through Leo, the sun god marrying the earth mother. So it's kind of, very well suggested from that's what we're talking about.
Interesting.
So
The
now,
the
go
strength
ahead.
card, sorry, just the strength card in the major arcana comes to mind with you just saying that.
Yes. Yep.
Right, right. So you have
And
the virgin
okay.
or woman holding the lion's mouth, right? So
Yep. And that's another great one. You reminded me of that. So I don't know if you're familiar with Sekhmet.
oh yeah, Sekhmet. Yep.
Sekhmet. Yeah,
Okay.
she's a lion-headed goddess. Um, of course, so we got the lion-headed goddess who, basically that associates us with a feminine aspect of Leo. This is in the
Mm.
time of year. So this is I'm going to get to the Persephone thing later. I'll hold off on that for now
There's a
because
lot of
but
ground to cover, but yes.
there's a tremendous amount of ground to cover because there's a whole nother layer to this, which philosophically pulls the whole thing together in a really remarkable way. So
Sure. Well, let's
um,
continue with the house joys since we started talking about them.
yeah,
We're at the fifth
yeah,
house,
let's
so,
keep
so,
going.
so let's finish that off, and then we can move into other topics, other directions that
Yeah,
are very relevant
yeah,
to us.
we'll just go through all the houses and then we'll move on to the next layer.
Sure.
Uh, so the
The
sixth
sixth.
house is of
It,
course the joy of Mars. So
mhm.
when we're thinking about the two halves of the zodiac as being representative of these sects, so there's literally a type of religion and a type of thinking that belongs to each half of the zodiac. And Mars is the malefic, which is something that is not really well understood by astrologers. It's generally thought of as just bad. And it does work out that way in terms of horoscopic astrology. You got a malefic there that's generally not good. It tends towards excess, really. However, when we're talking about a cosmological tool, the zodiac, the malefics are actually the gatekeepers of each of the sects. They're the force you have to get through or to use essentially in order to get to the other side. So they're the gatekeepers that will essentially either seal you in into
Right.
one side of the zodiac, or they're the ones that whose test you have to meet, like the 12 labors of Hercules, essentially, that you have to meet some kind of test to pass
Hmm.
into the next area.
Fascinating.
So the sixth house is associated generally with slavery, with the work that we have to do day to day to maintain our body, to maintain an income. It has to do with problems with the body, solving problems with the body. It's medicines and things that have a lot to do with the body. And it's exercise and routines and things that are really either can enhance the body or can lead to problems. And if you
Sure.
have bad transits of the sixth house or bad planets in the sixth house, you tend to have body problems, or you need to have a routine in your life that will, accommodate those issues. So now the sixth house is this gatekeeping house between the lower realm of the zodiac, which is the goddess realm. And as we know, Mars is disruptive essentially of this sect. He does serve the goddess because he is all about this like very strong emotions, and I describe Mars as being a the feeling that we get when something is not right or something's a threat to us. When you have a very strong Mars, we have a good sense of something that's wrong, like a conflict. It's like something that comes from inside that makes you feel like I have to, there's a problem that I have to resolve. And a good, a well-placed Mars will often be able to act decisively to remove conflict from your life. That's really a lot of his function. But Mars is also when we get into this goddess realm of what the goddess is about. It's about fertility, really. We just went through the fifth house, which is 100% about fertility. That's about as much you can get about fertility. But the sixth
Hmm.
house is also this the phallic principle is extremely important here, in which martial energy can either be used to lift up, when you have, if there's conflict in your life and you have to resolve it, you have to create, you have to enforce boundaries around your life in order to be able to be safe,
Of
essentially.
course.
And the goddess realm is actually not very safe because it's not about laws. It's not about transcendent ideas that, we create in order to codify ideas. That doesn't really apply to the goddess realm. The goddess realm is actually a pretty dangerous place when it's about child rearing, it's about feeling, but it's not about laws. It's not about structures, and it's a fairly dangerous place. So a martial male who isn't,
Well,
um,
it's the night. So we're talking about,
it's the
the
night,
night,
yeah,
there's wild animals that can, eat you
exactly.
alive. So it's a dangerous time. Whereas
It's
the
a
day,
dangerous time, exactly. Yep. Yeah, and when we talk about this is the male archetype within this embodied realm. And it's not necessarily in any way transcendent. It's not really necessarily geared towards laws or making things safer in the world because it's perfectly happy to go out and just start, fighting with other people. However, Mars can also have this other side of it in which it is equivalent to Atlas, in which it actually lifts up the sky. And that's what Mars in the sixth house in his archetypal proper role is Atlas, in which he is pushing the sky up,
right?
and he's
Because
actually supporting us in moving into a solar realm. But
fascinating.
you have to be able to marshal your that energy bring it into your this place where it creates a solar world where there's laws, there's agreements, there's codified ideas. Civilization essentially exists above the horizon. Below the horizon, it's Lord of the Flies, basically.
Right.
It's
Well,
like anything goes,
that
Go
sixth
ahead.
house, seventh house cusp line, that is the division between the sky and the earth as
Yes.
well. So
Yep.
essentially that's perfect because
Yep.
it's the ascendant descendant line we're looking at here. If we had a
Yep.
graphic right now,
Precisely.
but people familiar with the
Yep.
zodiac wheel can envision that. So it's interesting you say
Yep.
that Mars is Atlas because he's holding up the seventh house. And
Exactly.
that's the crossover point because at this point we've reached the autumn equinox, right? So now we're at
Yes.
Libra.
Yep.
The gates of
Yep.
Libra are the gates where there's that weighing, right? And then essentially the night, well, the light decreases and the night or the darkness increases, and then we pass over
Yes.
into the solar realm, essentially.
Precisely. So yes. And just a few more things on so when we talk about
Yeah.
the sixth house in terms of the natural zodiac, we're talking about Virgo. Now, my whole book is about Venus and Virgo and why Venus falls in Virgo. And
Mm.
that is, you got to read the book if you want to get all that information. But so, what we do find in the final decans of decan specifically of Virgo is that this is all about death. This is where Mercury becomes the psychopomp in order
Mm.
to essentially guide Persephone down into the underworld. And one thing that's very strange about Virgo, with it's unique in all of the signs in that it has its ruler is also exalted. So we have one archetype
Yes.
that is doing two things. And if we want to understand what exaltation means, rather than rulership, because it's pretty vague. If you take an astrology class, they're going to say that it's something like a magistrate, visiting magistrate who can make law, but isn't actually like engaged in the day-to-day ruling of the place or something like that. So
Right.
it's brought into this context where it's like it's talked about like a metaphor of a kingdom, and that's not incorrect. That is correct. However, if you read the Bible, Jesus is exalted when he comes back from the underworld. So
Mm.
the exalted role is actually a traditional Messiah role, which means that it's like a saint or it's somebody who is coming back from or going into an underworld. And that is true of all of the exaltations. And I could go through them at maybe another podcast, but each of the exaltations represents a return from an underworld for that archetype. So you got to understand they each have their own, this is why, no two signs are ruled in the same way, and no two exaltations mean the same thing. So it's the actual, when you fractalize the zodiac in this way, I mean,
Mm.
there's a fantastic amount of information that you can get, but you got to know what these things mean. And this is why you got to have this religious and sect-based idea. And the word sect itself means religion, and
Yeah.
people throw around the word sect and they don't question, oh, wait, it actually does mean religion because nobody has figured this out before, that it actually is
Yeah.
religion, that there's
No, yeah.
actually these two types of religion.
Right.
So, go ahead.
No, well, I was just gonna say, yeah. Once I heard you say that, it really felt like it was really obvious because the only other place I've ever heard the word sect is when it's talking about cults and religion. That's the only other place I've
That's
ever
it.
heard that term used. So,
Yep.
well,
Yep, sectarianism.
exactly.
Anytime you've got divided into sects. And why do we use this term? It's because it's literal. It's actually what they mean. And there actually are two sects, and there were two sects in ancient times.
Right.
So just moving forward, the sixth house. So now the seventh house is actually the place, like mythologically, where it's like you go through the first six houses, and there's like a lot of suggestion. And I've only scratched the surface of the stuff that's in the class. I'm just giving you the big picture.
Right. Right.
But once you get to the seventh house, this is the gold. This is the stuff that confirms everything that I have been saying. So when you get into traditional Greek gods, the Greek gods of the air, of the sky, are not represented in the zodiac. They're there in Greek mythology, but you don't see them because there's no necessarily place for these characters. However, once you start getting into this, you find all of it. The seventh house is the traditionally the place of the sunset, which is called the Hesperides in the Greek mythology. The Greek mythology says that there's three nymphs who are present in at the sunset in this place in the southwest. It's
Okay.
also the Southwest is the place of death. There's an island in the Southwest traditionally in cultures all over the freaking world that say that if you when you die, you go to an island in the Southwest. Now this
Hmm.
the Greek myths tell us that Hera, who is the goddess of the air, was married to Zeus, and for the wedding, Gaia gave Hera a tree of golden apples.
Mm-hmm.
And when you understand what that means, Gaia is the earth sign of Virgo,
Hmm.
handing the golden apple to Hera, who represents the air sign of Libra.
Right, right.
That is all the golden apple, the apple that Hades gives to Persephone. The apple itself is actually Persephone herself. This is the fruit of
Uh-huh.
the goddess's fertile season. So she's handing off the fruit to the underworld, to the tree to grow in the underworld. And that fruit literally is Persephone herself.
I see.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
So now in the seventh house, this is tradition. This is a place of marriage. We got that from the Hesperides. This is where Zeus marries Hera. And this is where now we're in the place where Hades has just stolen Persephone down into the underworld with the permission of Zeus. So now we're at a marriage. This is where the seventh house is where the night and the day become married. The two become married, and this is the fall equinox.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the most common wedding season, even still, in our culture today, having
Mm-hmm.
thousands of years away. This is when people get married, and this is
Mm-hmm.
the reason why, because the symbolism of the fruit of the earth, the kore is another word for virgin, coming from the virgin of the which is the sign of Virgo, being handed off to Hera, which is the exaltation in Libra of Saturn. Now, Saturn plays the
Mm-hmm.
role of Hades. He's the first, we've had, to this point, we've had Venus is playing the role of Persephone in our ritual drama, essentially, that
Yeah.
I would, if you take the class, you get to go through the whole thing. We'll go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
But this is where we find out that our partner to Persephone, who has stolen her from the upper world, which is the lower part of the Zodiac,
Mm-hmm.
he has taken her away. He's abducted Persephone. And this is where he marries her. This is where the two become joined. Now, what does Saturn signify? He signifies contracts. He signifies agreements. He signifies laws. And for the first time, Persephone is now in a contractual arrangement with Hades or with Saturn, which is a radical change for her because there was no law essentially. As again, these first six houses represent childhood as well, in which mothering a child is not about laying down the law. It's all about this up close and personal
Mm-hmm.
emotional bonding, experiential. All of this is it's basically the end of childhood here, and Persephone is now the Kore has become, she's now in rulership. She's become the queen, but she's in
Mm-hmm.
a place where she's in her underworld, which tells you that, frankly, she doesn't want to be there. That's not really what she's about. This is the zodiac is constructed from the point of view of the goddess of the feminine, and that's something that is very hard for people to understand. We also one other concept, and I'll just talk about this now, is the zodiac, as I've said, is the astrology is giving us actors in heaven. However, when we talk, it's common to talk about the signs as being stages upon which, and I used to use this metaphor. However, the signs are not stages. They are the homes of these chthonic gods, and they set the terms of rulership. The rulership is not being determined from above; it's being determined from below. And this is true in ancient cultures, in which if you know about Egypt, the pharaoh, you could not be the pharaoh just being the strongest guy in the block. You couldn't just be
No.
Mars, going knocking people over. It was the pharaoh, the royal wives of Egypt
Hmm.
would only they would approve that a man become the pharaoh. It was always a hidden group of women who were behind the throne.
Yeah,
So
you can
this
even
is
tell by the
something.
but even by the garb that they would wear, the vestments, the crowns. That was all. It's all very feminine, which is already
Oh
telling,
yeah,
even if it's like kind of well, it's not obvious for people that haven't studied symbolism, but um, yeah,
right.
you
And
definitely needed their blessing in order to even to ever reach the throne, which the throne is actually a symbol of the goddess as well. So to even
Isis,
sit
yeah,
to Isis,
the
exactly.
throne is Isis. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And I'm going to get to actually the symbolism in a moment of because we
Sure,
have the
sure.
two
I
the
didn't mean to
pillars and
interrupt your
no, no,
rhythm
no, that's
here, but
okay.
I just wanted
No,
to
that's great.
mention that. But yeah,
Yeah.
continue anyways with you were
So
going.
So another thing that traditionally, so we're now in completely in Homeric myth territory right here. So this
Okay.
is we're being told that the Zodiac is a ritual drama of the hymn to Demeter. Now it's confirmed essentially. So what
Hmm.
happens to Demeter once Persephone goes into the underworld? She laments the loss of her daughter and she won't allow anything to grow. So for all the time that Demeter is underground with Hades, Demeter's looking for her and she's so grief-stricken at the loss of her daughter
Hmm.
that she won't allow any plants to grow. So now what happens at 15 degrees of Libra? Now, if you know your astrological doctrines and techniques, that is the exaltation point of Saturn. What happens there as
Interesting.
well? That is the place where the Via Combusta begins. And the
Ah,
Via
yes.
Combusta is where literally in traditional astrology, you were not supposed to start anything. Like it was like salted ground. You could not do anything between either between 15 degrees of Libra and 15 degrees of Scorpio, or it was between 15 degrees of Libra and 3 degrees of Scorpio. And what happens at 3 degrees of Scorpio? That is the degree of fall of the moon.
Hmm.
So this is where the moon is so upset at the loss of her daughter that she won't let anything happen. That she's this is a lamentation of Demeter over the loss of her daughter. Now, when you get into Scorpio itself, the sign of Scorpio, we have a martial character being introduced, and the moon falls, and Venus goes into detriment. So now this eighth house is traditionally the house of your significant other's stuff. We've entered a mirror zodiac of the first six houses. So the eighth house, which is traditionally, people think about it as things that, legal agreements, things that come sort of out of left field. Death also is there. But it's sort of a weird house unless you start to understand what is, this Homeric myth. So this is where Persephone is going fully into the realm of contracts. Now, this is where the contracts of her husband Hades have come into effect. So this, because we're moving away from the goddess world, we're moving into the world of ideas. We're moving into a world where things are structured. We create structures and laws, and ideas start to be the thing that matters versus the body. So we've left the
Hmm.
realm of the body and we've entered the realm of ideas. Now, these are the contracts that she has entered into with Saturn now come into effect. And she perhaps didn't understand that. And maybe all she now she's eaten the four seeds of the pomegranate or of the apple. You know, those are interchangeable.
Yeah, yeah. Which are the actual
And
seeds
those
of the god, right? The actual
yeah,
seeds.
and
So the
yes,
sexual
when we're talking
reference there,
about
essentially.
yes, that's a sexual reference. That's the
Absolutely.
seed of the gods.
Exactly.
And so
Hmm.
this is, so now she's in a sexual world with Hades,
Hmm.
essentially. Or perhaps the other thing it kind of points to is this is a different man who maybe we may be talking about Lancelot in the Arthurian myth where she's having an affair with one of the guys in the palace or something like that. You know, this is
Okay.
starts to look because that's very scorpionic, where you've got intrigue, you've
Sure.
got this, multiple interests, a lot of desire, a lot of power, a lot of like contests for power. You know,
Hmm.
Scorpio is very much about that, and it's very much about the fallen female, the goddess who's lamenting the loss of her daughter. That's the moon in her fall. And we've gone over the decans of Scorpio previously, and
Right.
you get into like the third decan of Scorpio, and this is all about the fall. This is about bad relationships,
Well, Venus as
lamenting
well.
relationships. Yeah.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, Venus, they're both. She's in detriment, and the moon is in her fall. So this is all, this is women lamenting bad relationships and things they didn't understand, and it's also very performative in terms of that.
Uh-huh.
The second decan is about the what can happen when it's good, when there's a combination of opposites. That's all about alchemy. So the eighth house then becomes a lot more clear now. We're talking about these things that come with Hades' world that she can't control. That it's all from her perspective. The eighth house is confusing. It's like other people's desires, contracts, things that are like that come with his world, and she's not really ready for that. So that's why a eighth house has this signification. Now we get into the ninth house, and this is the joy of the sun, and this is a trine to the ascendant, and this
Hmm.
is things that flow easily from our mind. These are things that come out, ideas that are transcendence. This is where we've reached it's not mutable, but we've reached the end of the season, the cadent house.
Oh, yes, yes. Mhm.
So it's a Caden house. So this is, it's Sagittarius in our Thema Mundi, and so it's got a
Um,
signification of, the first house is where we initiate things. The second is where we fix them. The third is where we gather the information together from the rest of the season, so we know what to do moving forward as we initiate a new season. So the third and the ninth have this cadent idea in which we've gathered up information in order to then disperse that information to the rest of our sect. Now we're
uh-huh.
solidly in the day sect. So the
Yes.
sun is in its joy.
Hmm.
This is, traditionally it's Jupiterian in that it's Sagittarian actually.
Right.
This is, it's got this is where I talk about the myth of Demophon. And Demophon, are you familiar with Demophon?
I'm not actually. Go ahead and explain that.
Okay. So this is the myth of Demeter, in which Demeter has now she's mourning the loss of her daughter, and she incarnates as a mortal, and she gets abducted by pirates, which again is a metaphor for something we won't get into that right now.
Okay.
Um, but this is she gets abducted by pirates, and then she winds up in this house, like in a place where she gets befriended by a woman who's like a caretaker of a child, and the parents of the or I think she's a family of the this the yeah she's like an aunt to this a child, and the parents of the child are too old to take care of the child. This child is named Demophon, and
Mm.
basically Demeter is missing her daughter so much. She's like, I want to take care of a child. My daughter's gone. This is horrible. So I want to be near a kid. So because she's a goddess, what she does, she's missing her daughter so much that she wants to impart immortality upon this baby, Demophon. So she brings at night when the at night, of course, because she's the moon, and she's looking for children. And this also brings back the myth of Zeus, and the ninth house actually has a great deal of child signification that's occulted.
Mm.
So she at night she'll take this child and she like actually puts the child in a fire in this special ritual, trying to burn off the mortality of this child. And one day, she's got the kid in the fire. And one day, the mother of the child comes in and sees it and like, oh my God, you're burning my child to death. But she's actually doing a special ritual. And when we talk about fire, that is often a metaphor for things like venoms and um, sort of toxic herbs that
Mm.
were used in ancient times to confer some kind of a immunity. So like what
Yeah.
that is actually talking about was she was probably dosing the kid with venom because we're actually now in the hidden sign of Ophiuchus, which is right above Sagittarius. The foot of
Okay.
Ophiuchus comes down right
That's right. That's right.
into Sagittarius.
Hmm.
So there's this interesting connection to, and then the Ophiuchus connects us to the Hercules or Zeus, the constellation that's sitting above that,
Right.
which is the great god that's up there. So the actual great god is Hercules up in the sky above Sagittarius, above Ophiuchus. So if
Hmm.
Ophiuchus is actually the Messiah. This is actually the character who sits between the great god and the human world that's represented by the yellow road
Mm. It's
and how
fascinating.
it passes. So yeah, so the Demeter has been trying to confer immortality, which is incredibly Sagittarian, trying to get past, it's all this transcendent stuff.
Hmm.
And then she's failed and she gets upset because the kid can't be immortal, but it winds up being a good thing anyway because this is another sort of manifestation of this goddess religion in which you're going through a physical test or a mystery initiation. So this child is a metaphor for us going through that sort of initiation and realizing that you have to be mortal anyway and you're going to die, essentially. But, it's like this spiritual cleansing that happens through this fire, which was again probably venom. Um, so there's that. The ninth house is loaded with mythic information. Then we get to the tenth house. So what we see in the tenth house is we know that we've got the joy of the sun in the ninth, and we've got the joy of Jupiter in the 11th. So what this actually is creating is twin pillars. This is Jochin
Uh-huh.
and Boaz between the throne that is the 10th house. So it's the
Uh-huh.
combination of the sun and Jupiter, but it's in our um, telling the story of the seasons. This is Capricorn, so it's rules. It's all about rules.
Hmm.
We've got this inversion happening in which our tree of life is inverted and our roots are up the top. But this is the root of
Hmm.
power. This is Capricorn is the root of power. This is the center of power. And it's often occluded. We don't see where power is in reality. We can't just walk into the king's chambers. This is like, and it's guarded by Saturn and Mars. We've got our rulership of Saturn, who sets the rules, and we've
Hmm.
got Mars, who is there as a fertility god because this is the rebirth of the sun. He's doing two things there. He's pledged his his servitude to Saturn essentially. So he's following the rules. So we, as people know, people who are familiar with um, Hellenistic astrology, this is the exaltation of Mars in the 10th house.
Right, right,
So this is where we have our bodyguards essentially up there in two ways. We're within the realm of the sun and Jupiter, but we have the two bad planets. They're protecting us and also prepared to knock us out of the throne if we mess up,
right.
essentially. So,
Also
they're
guarding the roots. If we're talking about going
guarding
back
the roots.
to the seasons, when in the wintertime
Yep.
all the energy goes down to the roots. So
Goes down the roots.
in
Yep.
that sense,
Yep.
there's that
Yep.
protection.
Yep. So what I do in I don't even get this far in this class. The next class that I'm doing is going to be putting all this together and bringing the tree of life metaphor, which I just brought into this.
Okay.
I hadn't used that yet, but we're going to bring in the tree of life metaphor and all this other stuff into this to really show exactly how this freaking thing works, which is it's enormous. So yeah, so the 10th house is our it's this winter solstice. So
Yes.
symbolically, this is the place where the things are most cold and they're farthest, it's our 10th house, so it's like the furthest up in the sky, where the sky god is. It's also the most abstract.
Hmm.
It's also where we have laws and civilization is built on abstractions, and this is why it's called the greater sects. It's these are because the impact of ideas of civilization far outweighs that of the physical realm, which is up close and personal. However, if the 10th house, or if you're building this civilizational structure essentially, is not connected down into the earth, it floats off into space and it's irrelevant and becomes something that's just, when you have a government that's not based in what the people want in their traditions, in their civilizational ideas, your government is going to be treated like a foreign government, that it's, an occupying force. So this is like when we talk about the two sects, they have to be connected. And this is the place where it's at its worst if it's not connected. The 10th has to be connected down into the fourth, which is the ancestry of the people. That's where the people's
Hmm.
identity sits in the fourth. And if
Right.
the 10th is purely, ideals and, these things that aren't connected down into who the people are, then it becomes very bad. And again, you have very bad planets up there in your exaltation and your rulership. So
Sure.
what it's telling us is like, this is only the only way things work is if it goes down rooted into the people. And whenever you see Mars in a situation in the zodiac, you have to think blood. So,
Hmm.
what gets you into the highest place in traditional civilization but blood,
Well,
meaning blue
bloodlines.
blood,
Right.
bloodline?
Bloodline.
Yes.
Yep.
So, you've
Hmm.
got Mars in the 10th telling you, in exaltation, that your blood is what is going to get you up to the highest place in the zodiac in a traditional and today too. I mean, there's no, like all the presidents are related back to like the same people. It's like it's
Yeah.
just hidden now. Just like we have that's not necessarily bad. And if you I've made a video recently. It's called the Chthonic Gods and the Royal Bloodlines, something like that. If you anybody who checks this out can go onto my Substack and find that video in which I describe the exact, some of the most important ways in which royal bloodlines are actually rooted in these chthonic gods. And so when we talk about, these elites being Satan worshiping, like all these things, there's a reason because they are actually traditionally literally married into the because there's unnatural birth, all sorts of things out about traditional mythology, and mythology around royalty connects them completely to the chthonic gods.
Right.
So anybody who's interested can check that out. So I won't go into that anymore.
Sure, sure. But all goes
Um,
back to blood, essentially, is
all
what
goes
you're
back to
saying.
blood. Yep.
Right.
Yep. So anywhere you find Mars, think blood. The sixth
Absolutely.
house, if you don't have the right blood, you won't get past the sixth house. You
Oh,
know what I'm
yes.
saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
Mars
and the
is the
blood is
color.
fallen
Well, red is the color of Mars. He's associated with the blood in the body. I mean, the birth
Yep.
process is a very bloody process. And of
Precisely.
course,
Yep.
And Mars rules those last decans there, last decan of
Right.
Pisces and the first decan of Aries, that double decans in two signs, and which we'll talk about the decans in some,
Exactly.
maybe we'll do a part two and we can get into how the decans fit into all this. If you're down, I'd love to
Sure.
explore
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
We
Yeah,
still,
this yeah,
and
go
I would say
ahead.
we still have a little bit of time, maybe about 15 more minutes. Do you
Okay.
want
Yeah,
do you
I'll
want
keep
to do you want to
going.
finish do you want to finish at least talking about the 11th house and then the 12th house joys?
Yeah, let's do those and then we can
Round this off, and then
wrap
yeah,
it for
I had
tonight.
a lot of other
Yep.
questions about this. I mean, I love how we're just pacing ourselves here, and you can really. I didn't want this to be like a superficial rundown. I'm appreciating you taking the time to really elaborate and bring in all the different layers because I know it's a lot to unpack. So, uh, uh,
Yeah, it's there's so much here and it's when you start to put the whole thing back together, it gets really super fascinating too.
yeah, yeah.
So now moving to the 11th, there's a lot more to say about the 10th, but again, my class will go into much more depth about that. The 11th is it's the joy of Jupiter, and this is traditionally where we're talking about friends and people who are of a like mind, but we need to think about this again in terms of religion.
Well, the good spirit.
This is
That's what it's,
our
that's what it's
yeah,
called,
good
right?
spirit.
Hmm.
And that actually is something I'll deal with too, because we're dealing with a shadow zodiac again. So this is like it's when we get to the seventh house, the 11th
Uh,
house, fifth house of the day sect.
yeah,
So
yeah.
this
All
is
right.
this is where the children of Hades and Persephone are going to be born, essentially.
Hmm.
Now, in traditional mythology, not people, many people know this. They have Hades and Persephone have a child, and that they actually have several, but they have one child that is Death. Its name is Death. It is Death,
Hmm.
but it's the death that becomes your friend. This is when you become embrace death as something that is your friend. So, what do you find in the 11th house? Friends. So this links the this idea of friendship, and it's also, of course, a friendly Venusian aspect to the ascendant in the 11th. This is the joy of Jupiter, so it is a place where we can preach to our choir. These are people who are going to be of like mind and have a same. This is all based on ideas up here. This is again abstractions. This is a very religious house in a lot of ways. People often think of the ninth as being religious. This is in many ways more
Well, right. Well,
religious.
it's Jupiterian. It's Jupiter. Jupiter is essentially the sage, the
Yes,
spiritual teacher, the
right.
religion itself,
So
even.
yeah, exactly. And it's in our natural zodiac. It is Aquarian. So which is
Uh-huh.
interesting because this is in order for people to like understand and resonate with your ideas, you generally have to be pretty conservative in your dogma. This is where our dogma is, our doctrines,
Right.
the ideas that have become accepted and are agreed upon by people.
It's fixed
So in that
air,
way,
like you're
which
saying.
is air, yeah.
But it's the fixed modality. So you're talking about dogma. Dogma. What is dogma but fixed air, essentially, right?
Yes, exactly. It's fixed ideas. It's so
Exactly.
Saturn, what Saturn does is he gives ideas weight. He gives them
Uh-huh.
gravitas, gives them gravity. So in the 11th house, we have ideas that have gravity. They have weight to them.
Hmm.
And they're ideas that, if you put forth ideas that are not in line with the dogma, with the accepted scriptural ideas, there's a good chance they're not going to resonate back down to into the people. So in some ways, this shows us that the 11th is maybe a little bit less friendly than we think, having Saturn as our one of the planets that's essentially in a very strong position here. This is a thema mundi again. This is not horoscopic, but it is a uh, this is different. This is like we're forming a thema mundi based on Homeric mythology and all the information that we essentially have.
Right. One quick
Uh,
question, just with what you're
yeah.
saying about ideas not being in line or conforming. Would you say then that the 11th house is maybe also the house of heresy? So it's essentially like
Yes, yes,
offshoots, essentially not controversial ideas, essentially being yeah, being considered a heretic because you're not conforming to the dogmatic
right,
doctrines
right.
of say
Yeah,
a
this is
religion.
the Aquarian aspect of Saturn is in fact very contrarian.
It's
This
dissenting,
is
right?
where
As
it's
opposing to
dissenting.
Capricorn's like the establishment, is the way I see it. And then Aquarian, it's
Yes,
still structures, but essentially it's the dissenters, the ones that question the system and want to put forth an alternative system that's
exactly.
maybe more progressive in a way. I mean, that word
Right,
maybe
right, right.
carries a different connotation, but you get my meaning. It's Saturn in two different
Precisely.
expressions, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. This is where we comment upon the 10th house. We're in a flow model here, so we're going
Sure.
towards towards the end of the day sect. This is where we're moving towards its end, and this is where new ideas are introduced.
Hmm.
And it's air, so we can be extremely critical of what's going on in the 10th house here. It's just can be very subversive. It can introduce new ideas, and because it's just ideas, we can attack the root that's in the 10th and start to gain traction here. So it can actually be a quite subversive house. And that's something that I think that people, miss that in a traditional astrological. We just think this is good spirits, good happy stuff. There's a lot of potential for this being a much more subversive and contrarian kind of place. It's
Hmm.
easy to attack from a place of ideas, until you've actually tried to put them into action, into seeded into the earth. They can
Right.
be
Into a
pretty
form.
yeah, it's just theory
It's
essentially.
abstract. Yeah. Right. Hmm.
It's abstract. So
Hmm.
what we get to is now this the 11th house is across from the 5th house. So we get, the idea of Jupiter in his joy here. Jupiter was, of course, Zeus, who went around having affairs with every nymph, every goddess, every mortal royal blood woman he could,
Right.
which is a metaphor for seeding the ideas into the faithful. However,
Hmm.
the potential for abuse, like dipping down into the 5th house, and like the priest who's taking advantage, going across the crossing the line essentially,
Yes. Yes.
is a very traditional thing. So there is some, like, keeping those things separate is kind of important, potentially,
Right.
but a very natural kind of intermixing of
But it's part of
the
that that
faithful.
art. It's part of that archetype. It encapsulates that part of that
Yeah,
archetype as well, Jupiter, and then maybe that more
it does.
malefic side. I mean, you have to see archetypes in a holistic manner. Is what I'm learning from
Exactly.
you that you can't just judge it from one perspective. That you have to see that
Right.
what. Also, not just looking at surfaces, like what you're saying in terms of it's really a metaphor of seeding ideas, essentially.
Yes. Yep.
Right. So,
Yep. Because it's a
um,
sky god, so he's
mhm,
not embodied. He's seeding ideas into the. So let's move on to the 12th. The
let's do
12th
it.
is probably one of the strangest houses in astrology, and it's in
Hmm.
many ways very confusing because this is the joy of Saturn. And again, these Saturn is the gatekeeper that gets us out of the day sect. So he can,
Uh-huh.
lock us down. We can't get out, so we're stuck in the world of ideas, or he tends to bring us back down because he gives gravity to things. So
Sure.
he's a castrator. He castrated his father. So castration is a metaphor also for death, because this
Uh-huh.
is where we lose the sky god's only connection to the goddess is through the phallus in
Yes.
traditional thinking.
Sure. Sure.
So given that there's no more phallus, he becomes hallowed. This is where we get the idea of the galley priest, of the castrated priest who's lived out his life with the goddess, and now he's purely floating around in the upper houses, essentially, of astrology. And
Hmm.
taken literally, these things are kind of nuts because we
Sure.
had these things in traditional life that people took these things very seriously. These
Sure.
metaphors were enacted amongst a lot of people, and
Hmm.
whole religions were created using these metaphors as real, because there is power in these. These are not to be taken lightly. And we shy away from a lot of these now, and I think the reason is because they're so powerful, that we
Hmm.
can't handle our own sexuality and all of these things in their real meanings. So the
Hmm.
12th house is traditionally thought of as a place of isolation. It's a place of psychic disturbance, dreams. It's also places we go where we are alone. Traditionally, like universities would be here, where you'd be ascetic, you would be in isolation.
Or monasteries more.
Because what's that?
Like monasteries, maybe more so.
Monasteries, yeah, yeah, yep, which is extremely Saturnian. You know, when you think
Hmm.
about this is the joy of Saturn when he's alone, when it's not physical activity. This is when we're inert, when we're inactive, and we are often trying to solve psychic problems. And it's often difficult to solve psychic problems when you're really busy with the rest of your life because you get, taken away in all of the busyness of like the sixth house.
Which
The
is the
sixth
opposite
house,
house, right? They're in pairs. So
which is
essentially,
the opposite
there's
house.
that contrast. Exactly.
It's that exact contrast. And in the sixth, you have Mars in his joy. In the 12th, you have Saturn in his joy.
Hmm.
So he deals with all of these things. And dreams are here too, like things that come out of our subconscious when we're not, when we're not in control of that, which is interesting because you would think dreams would be down below. But dreams are also a psychic phenomenon. This is like that not unembodied phenomenon, even though it's very much a I wouldn't say a byproduct of it is it's from the body. The body is telling us things and we can't control them. They're coming from this weird place. And
Hmm.
it's right above the where the sun meets the night. And of
Exactly.
course, we're going in opposite direction from the diurnal world. We're going backwards, which also tells us that we're going with Persephone because she is with the earth itself, with the signs. It's all about the goddess. It's all about the embodied, this embodied life
Sh-
force.
Right. Well, at this point, she's preparing to reemerge, wouldn't she be?
She's preparing to reemerge, which is why we have Venus in her exaltation. And again,
Exactly.
if you
Which
want to
would be
read my
Pisces, that
book
one.
about Yeah, read my
Hmm.
book if you want to, why she's in her exaltation. This is where we're dreaming of the goddess in her
Hmm.
flesh, that she's coming out into the
Yes.
world, and we think of her, we long for her. We've been through winter, and we would love to see the goddess's flesh again, the greenery, the warmth, and
Hmm.
all of to be with Demeter again, essentially, is what we're dreaming of here.
Yes.
So this is Pisces, and interestingly, we get, if you talk about horoscopic astrology, like having Saturn in Pisces it's not a very good placement for Pisces for
Saturn.
Saturn. It's like doesn't behave very well in Pisces, nor does Jupiter do fantastically well in
Aquarius.
Aquarius.
Right.
Honestly, these aren't great placements, but we're not talking about horoscopic astrology here. So it's like really important to like we are talking about a thema mundi and we're talking about a mythological context here.
Exactly. It's a different layer.
Different
For sure.
layer, and but this is actually the initial layer that everything came from.
Right.
So this is like we're at the roots here. We're sitting at the mythological roots, and we're dealing with the year, the
Hmm.
sacred year, and this
Right.
is a religious symbol. This is the zodiac, and I've this is my class gets into this a lot. The
Hmm.
zodiac was on the floor of synagogues.
Oh, yes.
Jesus, the character that we believe was historical Jesus, was Jesus of Gamala. We
Hmm.
have his synagogue. He had a great, big, beautiful zodiac on his floor with Helios, the Greek god, pointing up to the equinox, to the vernal equinox.
Hmm.
There were zodiacs in Christian churches up until the 12th century at least, and a few going beyond that. They were dealing with this, what I'm talking about. This is a religious symbol. You can suppress horoscopic astrology while upholding the zodiac as a religious symbol because it's God's will. It's
Uh-huh.
describing God's will, and it's also something that belongs to goddess cults, which are not in conflict necessarily with the outer religion of the state. This was
Yes.
something that's going on in personal, up close rituals. So that's the way they were thinking about it. This is the two sects. This was the goddess was happened in the dark, and nobody talked about it.
Hmm.
Literally,
Yep.
nobody talked about it. And the thing you get too is silence is a part of the 12th house.
Hmm.
You're going to go into the mysteries, you have to shut your mouth. You are going to get killed. They would literally kill you if you talked about the mysteries. It was literally a death sentence if you told people what you found out in the mysteries.
Oh yeah, it's the
So the
esoteric.
12th house. What's
Hmm.
that?
I say so. This is like the contrast of like the esoteric religion and exoteric religion is what comes to
Exactly.
mind.
Yep.
For
This
the
is
public, for the masses, versus then the more private, nocturnal religion, which is
precise.
like
Yep.
which or where
This
the
is the gateway to the
that's where
private religion. Well,
exactly like today's and I guess initiations to secret societies is something similar, where you have
yeah.
to pass through all these different rites. Again, that's what you're
Right.
saying with
Right.
like with very severe
Yes.
consequences, even death, if you do reveal what you are told, essentially.
Precisely. Just like the Masons are,
It's still around.
if you
Essentially,
go up,
it's the same model, right?
it's still around, it's still there. If anything, it's simply much more hidden nowadays because these have been sublimated and vilified. And just as the whole goddess tradition, what that's done is actually made the goddess much more dangerous because
Hmm.
we don't know who she is anymore, because we aren't familiar with the mysteries. This is why nobody has seen this before in the Zodiac, because they couldn't figure out what the hell this was talking about. And
Hmm.
there you go. This is what it's all about.
Yes.
And this is just going to open up more and more the more I look into it and the more other people start to understand what this is all about. So this is, the 12th house again. This is just to complete this thought. It's
Yeah.
where
Good.
Venus is exalted, and just to bring back the mythology of it,
Well, in Pisces,
Zeus.
not right, not
Yep,
in the theme of Mundi, right? And not in
uh,
the scheme of houses we're talking about. You mean your exaltation is
well,
in what context?
this is both.
Okay.
So this is we're talking about the end of the houses. Basically, this is where the life force is going back
Right. And
down to be with Demeter. So after Demeter had she's been like lamenting this whole time, essentially, while we're going through all of this underworld stuff. Demeter has been lamenting the whole time. And Zeus has attempted repeatedly to send the gods to Demeter in order to get her to cheer up, eventually, basically to get the seeds to grow again, because as long as she's been lamenting the loss of her daughter, she won't let anything grow, and she's horribly upset. So he's been sending the gods to visit her this whole time to try and like bring her improve her mood.
mm,
And that is the source of the idea that we come to people who are grieving and we have funerals. That's where this idea comes, and that's 12th house. The 12th house is where we go. That where do you go for a funeral? If you go to a church. The 12th house is this. And of course, Pisces is extremely religious. This is a Jupiter ruled place. This
yes.
is where we're looking for the goddess. And we can feel that she's so close. So we have this epiphany, like the goddess is coming back, and of course, in monotheistic religions, we've gotten rid of the goddess. And we have a bunch of, pre-equinoctial type of celebrations in Catholicism. A lot of stuff goes on here in that Pisces season that's sort of like Lent, that's sort of like reminding us and preparing us for this. In a lot of ways, what they're doing is to have us focus on this dying and rising God who embodies this life force that's coming up and down, but he's actually shepherding the life force, which is Persephone. He's the one who's keeping these mysteries. And he's a rising god, so he's Mars,
It's Mars.
and he's
Huh?
a falling god, so he's also Saturn.
Aha.
So just as we've seen in this our ritual drama, that this is a bifurcated archetype. It's two archetypes in one. It's your rising god and your falling god. So they're basically, but they're shepherds again, and you get this language in Christianity everywhere. The shepherd,
Mm,
it's shepherding something, but and it's supposedly us, which it is. It is. We are that life force, and we are in line with that life force as it goes through the sacred year. But
Hmm.
that life force is, and I found out what, I talked about it in my first book, but the term for that is Zoe.
Aha.
That is the traditional term, and it was a cry that was done. It was like sung out during Bacchic rituals. They would
Aha.
sing out the term, this Iwa also, which is Eve. It's the
Eve.
word
Okay.
Eve,
Okay.
which is
But
Eve of Adam and Eve.
right. I
So
mean,
she's not really a person.
it's the life
She's
force. So
this life force.
so
Yeah.
Zoe is the name Zoe is a reference to Persephone, which is the life force, essentially.
Yes.
Mhm.
And what are we talking about? We're talking about a zodiac, a
Exactly.
Zoe.
Uh-huh.
So
Zoe.
it's
Hmm.
we
Oh
have
yes.
this idea that it's a small group of animals, which it also is because the word means not only Zoe, but it's also zoon, which is comes from zoology, comes from that. So it is animals. It's both.
Yes.
But
It's many things.
that's
It's multi-layered.
how
It's
ancient
not
people thought.
all right. You can't be so fixed in your idea. You have to be very
Right.
open that different words have multiple meanings and there's multiple layers and multiple angles to understand all of this, as you're saying.
Right. 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 Exactly. So this is we've completed our 12 houses now, and we've got Mercury in his fall in the 12th, where he literally is falling to find his joy
Back to the
in the
first,
next
exactly.
back
Right.
to the first, where he's in his joy at that place of that place of liminality where he can go up, he can go down, he wants to stay at the horizon. So one thing you get in Greek mythology that's really strange is that the goddess Hecate accompanies Persephone throughout her underworld journey.
Mm-hmm.
Now, functionally speaking, Hecate is virtually identical to Mercury.
Hmm.
She sits in liminal spaces, doorways, crossroads. These are
Okay.
all like a metaphor for liminal spaces, places between the worlds. She's the goddess of the new moon, which is a liminal space
Right.
where the moon disappears and has a conjugal visit with the sun. It's a liminal space, and it also protects that life force. She's protecting a life force when she's going underground. So
Mm-hmm.
she's the goddess of magic because the magic happens in the liminal spaces, basically in those conjugal spaces where the sky god meets up with the Earth Mother. So she's
Interesting.
there, and if you go into the Gnostic um, cosmology, they say that, and it's pre-Gnostic too. This is in the Chaldean oracles. They say that the paternal mind radiates a seed of an idea, which then goes into the midwife, who is Hecate, and then she transmits that to the demiurge, who then makes it real in this reality. So there's a tripartite trinity of spaces. You have the pure divine, and you have Hecate, which is a daemonic space. Again, that's the name of my astrology is Daemon Seed astrology, which is obviously a reference directly to Hecate receiving the seed and then the daemon then transmitting it to us. And the daemon is our own genius. It's our own
Ah.
daimon. It's our fate, and it's also our sovereignty over our fate, that is seeded through understanding all of this. So
Right.
that brings it all full circle, essentially.
Right. Well, it's been great. Like, oh, I really appreciate you coming on and unpacking all this. This is fascinating information. Maybe you'd be willing to come back and do a part two soon. I mean, I had quite a few more questions, but I mean, you really covered a lot of the stuff I was already going to ask you about. But there's maybe a
Cool.
couple other points you could elaborate on because I know this is just kind of an endless subject with so many layers to peel back and all. But we're
Yeah.
kind of out of
Yeah.
time now. So let's
Yep.
talk later and maybe see about coordinating that. So
Perfect.
yeah. Well, anyway, thank you everyone for listening to this episode of Wheel of Ezekiel Astrology with Michael Suter. Do check out his book and his Substack. And definitely also the class. If this is something that's of interest to you, go for it. Definitely sign up. It's I think the links to the class are right on your Substack page. Is that right? Or just go to your
That's correct.
website. Your
And
website
yep,
is it michaelsuter.com or michaelmsuter.com?
it's michaelmsuter.com. Yep.
michaelmsuter.com. Okay, that's the website, everyone. So go check that out then. But I guess that's all there is for now. So Thank you for listening, everyone. As above, so below, as within, as without.